Now, Chuck Schumer and Manchin are holding meetings on how to move forward with President Biden's Build Back Better bill. Schumer has announced that the bill will be passed very soon. However, there will be some adjustments to the finalized version of the bill. Watch to the end to find out how to receive your fourth stimulus check. Schumer has said that he and other centrist Democrats like Manchin had discussed moving a bill that would unwind parts of the Republican tax law enacted when the former president was in office. The good news is that Schumer has confirmed that the bill could be passed in just a few weeks. The goal is to ease inflation, which is badly hurting economies, and President Biden's approval ratings. Democrats are eyeing a fast-track budget process that would bypass the need for 60 votes in the Senate necessary to overcome a Republican filibuster. Schumer told reporters today, "Look, reconciliation is very, very important, and I met with Manchin this morning. Our meetings were both preliminary and good, and we're going to continue to keep talking." Schumer added to reporters, "If you want to get rid of inflation, the only way to do it is to undo a lot of the former president's tax cuts and raise rates. No Republican is ever going to do that. So the only way to get rid of inflation is through reconciliation." Manchin of West Virginia, who played a key role in stalling the Democrats' sweeping spending bill, cited concerns about its impact on national debt and deficit. After today, meetings with Schumer, Manchin told reporters, "We talked about the tax code and doing something to combat inflation. He's just as concerned about inflation as I am. Reconciliation to me is about getting inflation under control, paying down debt, and getting a handle on what's going on." The West Virginia Democrat voiced an interest in potentially raising the corporate tax rate to 25% and the capital gains rate tax to 28%. To pass the reconciliation bill, Schumer would actually need to keep his entire caucus together, due to the evenly split margins in the Senate. It's unclear if centrist Democrat Chris Sinema of Arizona, who also played a big role in Build Back Better legislation, is open to the negotiations. Schumer has also said that today that President Biden is getting closer to canceling up to $50,000 in student loan debt for borrowers through executive action. During a speech on the Senate floor, Schumer said, "I'll keep urging the president to take this action, an important step. And I say to my colleagues, I think the president is moving in our direction. My talks with him and his staff have been getting very fruitful over the last little while, and I'm hopeful that we will do the right thing together." Now, the Biden administration extended the moratorium on federal student loan payments earlier this month, through the end of August. According to the Department of Education, a total of 43 million Americans owe a total of about $1.75 trillion in student loan debt. That's a number that has nearly doubled in the past decade. The progressive wing of the Democratic Party started pressuring Biden in the first weeks of his presidency to take executive action to cancel $50,000 in student loan debt. But President Biden shot down the proposal last year. With Schumer's optimism Wednesday, though, the president can move on his student debt ahead of the midterm elections this year. Jen Psaki actually told reporters the president has been considering and looking at options for how to provide more relief to students across the country. Meanwhile, Republicans have been united in their opposition to any student debt forgiveness. The GOP senators introduced an act that would actually end the suspension of repayments and prevent the president from canceling student debt. Senate Republican Mike Braun said in an official statement this week that the majority of Americans do not have college degrees, and this transfer of wealth is not a move to advance equity, but rather a taxpayer handout to appease activists. Folks, do you think President Biden is doing a good job on handling student debt? Tell me what you think in the comments.
Senator? I do.
Senator Whitehouse.
Chair recognizes Senator Kennedy first and then Senator Whitehouse.
Senator, if under your understanding of this bill, if we sue countries in antitrust from which we're now buying oil, and those countries take the position that, well, okay, while you're suing us, we're not going to sell you any of our oil, and the Biden administration continues its war on fossil fuels, so we can't produce our own oil, where do we get the oil?
Well, we'll find ourselves in the same posture as many European countries where President Putin is using this as a weapon. And if we get engaged in that sort of controversy with these oil-producing countries, then it will raise the price, and we won't be able to keep the lights on here at home.
Thank you.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make 2 points in response to Senator Cornyn's question. The first is that there's a well-established distinction in the law between governments acting in a governmental capacity and governments acting in a proprietary capacity. And when governments act in a proprietary capacity, they have to be treated more like other regular market participants because they're behaving like regular market participants. And I'm confident that the Department of Justice in implementing this law would reflect that well-established distinction in the law. The second thing is that there's one important fact that was omitted from Senator Cornyn's discussion of the oil market, and that is that it has a peculiarity. It is unlike other things. If an American company makes a widget, then they're going to calculate what the cost is of making the widget. They're going to figure out what they need to pay their investors and what their overhead is, and they're going to charge a price that is based on their cost. And that's sort of the basic principle of market theory. The basic principle of market theory doesn't apply in the oil market because the price isn't set by supply and demand, and it isn't set by what the cost is for domestic producers. It's set by this international cartel.
I think an ongoing issue of debate is whether or not the administration is or is not encouraging industry to produce oil and gas. And this has all the implications at the gas pump that the mom sitting at home who can't afford her gas and she can't afford an electric vehicle or a pickup truck is 15 years old, she's frustrated and she would like to have answers. So with that, I approach this conversation. And we know that if the administration sent signals, you rightly say that you can't turn on production like that, but if the administration sent signals now that there was going to be increased production, futures prices would fall. There's an inverse correlation between supply and price, and if investors are assured about future supply, then price can have a downward pressure now. So all this is beyond finger pointing. It is reality as to the implications for that mom sitting at home, unable to afford a nice new electric car. So with that said, I think it's important to note that you've mentioned some oil companies saying that government regulation is not an issue. But I think it's important to say that independent producers feel as if it is. And the IPAA, their members, produce 80% of the oil that is consumed in our nation. They sent a letter dated March 18th, to the president, in which they say specifically government actions are chilling the ability of them to produce. My colleague from Nevada rightly points out there's a lot of leases out there. The folks from the IPAA who make 80% of the wells, so 80% of the oil, say that leases are